Well, I just got out of the shower, so my hair's all wet. And, I couldn't be bothered to get totally dressed, so I'm just, naked from the waist down. So, oh, is this thing on? Oh. Whoa, I hope no one heard that. Hey Zul, hey Gary, hey Mikey, hey Big Shug, how are we doing? Surprise stream. Figured, had some time tonight. My wife is on a coach coming home, so she is inbound. I'm waiting for an ETA. The baby is asleep. I have the monitor. Perfect time to get streaming, right? I think I've got everything I need. Got my drink. Got snackage. Stylus, that's what I need. I need a stylus if I'm going to draw. Goodness me. How are we all doing this evening anyway? So, I'm going to show you progress. So yeah, I don't know how long I'm going to be streaming for tonight. It's just going to be for fun. No, wait. To minimize Photoshop for a second. Where did I put it? I think it's this one. Let me have a look. Nope. Oh, where's this bloody file gone? Nope, not that one. Oh, here we go. I think I can do this. Where did that go? Oh, I'm losing this file. Where did it go? I've saved it like several times. I've just lost this file. No, not that one then. 3D test T, is that it? There we go. Is this the one? That's the ticket, right? Right, here we go. I can actually show you now. I found the bloody file. Here you go. So this is the progress so far. Still a bit janky in parts, but I'll fix that. Try and get it smooth as possible. Yeah, bursts in, snaps here, stands there, eyes up whoever's going to be in the frame, and then starts to step over all the debris. So there we go. Anyway, so let's carry on. Let's carry on with this frame. Right, where are we going? Stepping over. Bear in mind, if the baby stirs, I have to go and sort it, and the wife isn't here, so the baby who wakes up in the night and only wants mummy doesn't have mummy tonight, so wish me luck. 5-3. M53. So I've painted this guy 53 times so far in this for this frame. Mikey says, I like how the door gets ripped as if it's made of paper. And Gary says, wow, just wow. Yeah. That's the idea. Because this is what YouTube was all about back when I joined YouTube. This is how I experienced YouTube. It was like people just making videos and just experimenting. And that goes on a fair bit still, but it is a lot of crap, isn't it? I mean, people might think what I'm making is crap, but hey, each to their own. Okay. Oh, we've got the infamous clock. Let me fix this bad boy. My post-shower evening wear. Big Chuck says, "No, not the clock, man. Anything but the clock. Oh, Clocky, Clocky, no." Ah. Poor clock. No, that clock is a nuisance to society. You know what I should do with that clock? Take it out back of the old barn with my old trusty double barrel and just blow the mother away. Speaking of blowing, I bought a weed burner. I know it's not blowing, but I bought a weed burner and I'm obsessed with it. It's like a flamethrower. You go out there and you just torch the weeds. Apparently it's environmentally friendly. Yes, the Megalosaurus are the Goombas of the series. What do you mean by that? Oh, Mikey says, I think the Megalosauruses are the brute force, Megaraptor more cunning. Mm-hmm. Yes, they are. But the Megaraptor, when it strikes, has brute force. That's what makes it dangerous. Like, it is as deadly as these, if not deadlier, because it's more cunning. But obviously... it's got the intelligence and the killing strike. See, I know it's getting Who Framed Roger Rabbit vibes from this scene. I'm glad of that, man. I'm glad you're getting Who Framed Roger Rabbit vibes, because that is a great movie. Mikey says the clock wasn't on InGen's list. Makes you wonder what else they didn't tell us. That clock is an abomination. It should be cast into the fire. Do you know, when approaching the animation of this scene, I've been thinking about it like so much for like so long, and I think the bit that gets me, the bit I'm worried about most, is this bit here. So with the crane, because the crane, it's not going to knock over the crane. It's going to walk under it, but because that's turning, that's a turning right there. It's got to like walk under and twist around, and that's the bit. And also the camera's ducking, so it's getting a lower angle. That's the bit I'm worried about most. Just this bit here, and we're only about here, like here. We got so long to go. Ah! I mean, I can speed up the footage, so we will get there. We will do it. You know, it's quite funny how deep into the Jurassic you are, that you look at a scene you've made and then you start to go, that's how it gets you. Nostalgia. That's how the nostalgia bug gets you. Because, oh god, I start reading into things. So like, for example, the whole theropod bursting into a building is very much akin to the T-Rex at the end of Jurassic Park, right? But not only that, in my subconscious, this bit here almost looks like when the raptor lifts the tarp up. But instead of lifting up and looking around, it looks in, then lifts it up, and then smashes in, and then comes into the frame almost like the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, grabbing the raptor. But yeah, the thing I wanted to do with this frame the most, and I think I'm quite happy with where it is so far. Obviously, I haven't fixed the tail because the tail's clipping through the wall. There's going to be some like clipping needed for this frame, and obviously shakes and vibrations and stuff. But anyway, that's besides the point. The thing I'm trying to achieve the most with this frame is to create like the most 90s looking thing ever. So, and try and capture nostalgia in a way that, like, I don't know, I don't see done as subtly. So like, for example, like obviously the 3D background here in my mind reminds me of the New Adventures of Johnny Quest, this 2D animated Saturday morning cartoon show that would have like 3D moments, obviously with Disney as well, like 90s Disney. And then you look at the colour of the dinosaurs and it's all like chaos effect tying into like the Lost World merchandise. And obviously then you've got the whole premise of, you know, Jurassic Park being big influence in the 90s, so you've got this dinosaur in a human environment. It's just trying to capture that feeling. You know? I hope I can achieve it. It reminds me of the Indominus. Yeah. Yeah, that kind of body shape. Big Chuck says to Jack, have you watched anything lately? I actually watched Olympus Has Fallen last night. I've seen Olympus Has Fallen and I didn't think too much of it, if I'm honest. But my wife's mum is absolutely obsessed with that movie series. She loves them. Sweet. So we've got about an hour and a half before the wife rocks up and I'll have to go. So let's get busy. Let's get busy. What have I watched? I've been watching Joe 90 a lot, the show from the 60s, the Super Marionation. My wife wanted to watch the first 2 episodes of Loki, and I was like, oh, okay. Because I'm like, Endgame was the end, I don't really care anymore. But she put some on, and you know, I said okay. She had just taken the baby for injections, and that was always a traumatic time. So yeah, we watched the first 2 episodes of Loki, and so far I'm like, it's just really depressing. Because it's like, the storyline is just basically making, so far it could have a twist, I don't know, but it's like making all of the actions of the entire MCU completely feel hollow and empty. It's just depressing. And I'm going to say it, there's obviously a lot of talent behind the show and stuff, but to me it just felt cheap. I think that might be because I'm used to seeing the MCU movies where they've got like millions of dollars pumped into them, and obviously Loki's not a cheap show to make, but it just feels cheap when you watch it. It's the green screens, it's like all the sets are really obvious, and the green screen is a bit naff at times. It's just, I was just sitting there going, yeah, I'm not engaged. Not engaged. I don't really know what my wife thought about it, actually. She didn't really talk about it much afterwards, so I don't know if she's gone. Yeah. But she's actually watching it. She said she saw the new Spider-Man trailer, because I showed it to her. I was like, look at this, look who they're bringing back. And then she was like, ooh. And then her sister was like, you've got to watch Loki if you're going to understand what's going to happen in Spider-Man. And I was like, we were like, okay. Alright. I put the bug in my wife's ear. And there we are, watching it. And we're both like, eh. We did have a conversation afterwards, and like I said, about like how it feels meaningless, pointless. But I feel like there might be a twist coming to do with that. And she was like, yeah. She kind of agreed with me. What am I doing? Why am I wasting time doing that when I can just go pop, 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 pop. Like that. There we go. What else have I watched? Obviously some YouTube stuff, but nothing really of interest aside from like what's going on in the news, but we don't want to go down that rabbit hole on this lovely chilled relaxing painting stream. I will be watching Back to the Future, the animated series, soon, because that came through the post. Old Saturday morning cartoon. I'm just interested to see like what storylines they told and stuff, and they've actually got like live action sections with Christopher Lloyd as Doc Brown, who introduces the show, so I'm interested to see how that plays out. And I know it's set after the 3rd film because the train's in it. So it is almost like a continuation, even though it's a Saturday morning kids show. And after Joe 90 though, that'll be after. So I'm watching Joe 90 at the moment, and then after that, I'm watching Jerry Anderson's last Super Mario Nation show. So in the vein of Thunderbird, Stingray, Captain Scarlet, and Joe 90. There's one more series that I only heard about the other day for the first time, and it's called The Secret Service, and it's about a vicar who has a shrinking device hidden in a Bible. Now I don't know what he's shrinking, but I'm hoping himself, but we'll see. It's a really short, it's only one series. And then after that I'll watch the Back to the Future series. Oops. is that not showing up? There we go. I swear there's some films and stuff I've been watching recently. I did watch Life as a House again not too long ago. My favourite movie of all time. That's it. I watched Hulk as well. Because a nephew of mine had never seen it. And they're like really big into the whole MCU, and I was like, you've never seen Hulk, so we started watching it, and they were actually really enjoying it. They were a bit confused when I started talking about how this one was originally meant to be kind of connected to the MCU, but they kind of dropped that. Yeah, the 2003 Hulk. I was telling them, I was like, this is my favourite Marvel movie. And they're like, oh. The best Hulk indeed. Oh, wrong colour. No, wait, no. Ew. Oh my word, you know what I've done? Coloured the outside of these claws in the colour that's meant to be on the inside. Silly old bugger. What have I done? Yeah, Hulk 2003 was the... So, okay, before I reveal this. When I was a kid, I had a rule. When I went to the cinema, that I would always see the movie once at the cinema and then wait for the video release. So then when it comes out on video, back in the day it used to take like a year or so before it came out on video. You could rent it at about 6 months after the release, so usually it was about then, but sometimes I wouldn't even like rent it, I'd wait until I could own it before I watched it again. And I did this all throughout my childhood. Like, I would refuse to go see a film again if I really enjoyed it at the cinema. And then Hulk came out, and that was the film that made me break my rule. That was the one that made me go, I want to see that again. So I did. I saw it twice at the cinema, and it was the first time. And then ever since then I've never stuck to that rule. Well, actually I have for a couple of films, but if it's a film I really like, then I'm like, well, why the hell am I not enjoying it at the cinema while it's out? Why am I like just sitting at home like, nah, I'm not watching that again. I think it's like to preserve the feeling of the seeing it for the first time, which is good, but it's like, I don't know, if I really like a film, go see it again, why not? I guess it's when you're an adult and you have more money, you're just like, yeah, right. Or spend a few bob paying and watch this film again. Why the hell not? highlight commentary. What, of Hulk? Mr. Hulk. Here comes Mr. Hulk. Here comes Mr. Hulk. Oh, highlight my commentary discussion. Oh yeah, I forgot we did a commentary for Hulk. Ah, that's what I want to do. I want to listen to a podcast or something rather than this music. Let's turn the desktop audio up. Let's listen to a podcast or something more interesting. Oh my god, Dino Park Media is streaming right now. I should jump him. Is there a Jurassic podcast? I swear there was one. Just trying to think. I swear there was one podcast I hadn't. Bear with me. Just looking through what I'm signed up to. Well, there's Clayton's new video, but I don't want to like... There is that Stuck on Sorna one.
Pretty much everyone loves the T-Rex, and after the first two films, it became an essential part of the franchise. So when JP3 unveils their new poster, even as a kid, I was a bit surprised. Gone was the T-Rex skeleton and replaced with a Spinosaurus. Not only that, but the entire look of the poster was different.
I'll put a link to this in the
now
description down below.
A silver metallic look with a shadow of a Pteranodon. So every fan, whether you were 10 years old or 25, you knew things were going to be different with the third film. The decision to have the Rex and Spino fight was an obvious one. The decision to kill the Rex was not so obvious, but definitely was bold. And yeah, looking back, I do appreciate the effort to try and be different, and not have that fear of killing off the T-Rex. They just did it. So our group, led by Alan Grant,
they killed the T-Rex from the Lost World.
The plane crash, being pursued by the Spinosaurus. They stumble upon a dino.
It's okay, it's dead.
But then realize this dead dino is being eaten by a T-Rex.
Nobody move a muscle.
So they turn and run. Being chased by the T-Rex, they suddenly come face to face with the Spino again. Grant trips and falls between two logs.
Amanda pushes him.
Trapped with the Spino and
she?
T-Rex.
I think. Big ship
The two
pushes him
dinos
in.
bite each other as compies scurry about the jungle floor. And then, the Spino grabs the T-Rex by the neck. And crack. To me, the fight is still very impressive, even looking back 20 years later.
It is impressive.
I was lucky
but
enough to speak
it's
with
too
a handful
short.
of the crew about the fight, the visual effects, the impressive animatronics, and learn a little bit more about the fight between the two animatronics at the end of filming. Ricardo, when you were storyboarding, you were mostly creating images of ideas, things that might possibly be in the film. I've seen some of your Spinosaurus images on your blog. Can you tell us a bit about those?
Anything that involved the Spinosaurus initially, I was kind of involved with. And so I was just kind of, again, because it was really early, like we didn't have a shooting script. We didn't have a script at all that I remember. And working from that outline, it was all broad strokes, and it was all about starting to figure out sort of the logistics of how stuff would happen, combined with brainstorming different ideas.
Was director Joe Johnston giving specific directions as to like the look of the Spino or different scenes? How involved was he in that process?
When I worked on, started working on the Spinosaurus stuff, Joe came by and he said, "Hey, Ricardo, you might want to use this." And so he laid this beautiful bust. I would say it's about 7 to 10 inches long. It was a faux bronze bust of the Spinosaurus head, right? And it was mounted on a sort of base, wooden base with a copper pole sort of stuck into it, right? And I fell in love with that thing, and I started doing my Spinosaurus stuff, and all the extra papers. I actually got the bust, and I just moved it toward the middle back of my desk.
I haven't watched Clayton's
And
latest
I don't
video.
know if I was actually going to end up keeping that thing, but I was really thinking about it, man. So I just started laying all these different drawings on top of it. Some of them were good, or some of them were the castaways. And I would say about 2 weeks later, Joe came by and he's like, "Ricardo, hey, do you still have that, that bust of the Spinosaurus? I could kind of use that right now." So I was like, "Oh, inside, right?" So then I just finally cleared all the papers away. I go, "Here you go, Joe."
Were there certain elements to the story that your images needed to serve a purpose for? Like the Spinosaurus needed to accomplish, 1, 2, 3.
How does the Spinosaurus not just chase them down immediately and eat them, right? Because he was just like the new badass of the story. And so I came up with a bunch of sort of vines and sort of dead tree sort of obstruction ideas that I did sketches for, and that was a lot of fun. And then the other thing that sort of we talked about was sort of the layout of the fight. I distinctly remember watching the movie for the first time with my family, and then I remember Joe saying, at a certain point, I want Sam Neill to get caught in these logs on the ground, and they're fighting, and they're stepping on the logs, but they're not crushing Sam because the logs are so big, right? And that made it into the picture. But
Yeah.
and that was just Joe riffing his ideas. But there's a few of them where you see the Spinosaurus head come in, and there's just a bunch of mangrove trees, and they're just he's snapping at them but can't reach them. That's my stuff. That sort of resonated with me as I watched the film.
That's cool.
I'm guessing that's where the image of the mudslide came in.
Yes, like absolutely, like
I don't know what this mudslide is.
that came
There
in
might be some like
because
artwork
I'm
I
actually
haven't seen yet.
my lineage is Costa Rican. I'm from Costa Rica, and my parents emigrated here, and never knowing their kid would end up growing up and working on a movie that's technically set in Costa Rica, if you will, right? But it just rains like crazy down there, dude, and there are mudslides around there all the time. So I tried to weave a lot of that stuff into the imagery that I was coming up with, and so that was a lot of fun. Just on my own, I did just different gag ideas of the Spinosaurus T-Rex fights, right? And I remember Joe coming back from lunch one day, and Joe had written a cryptic note Like I like this one, which was for me. Like I think I still have that post. It was just some dumb little post-it, man. That was on my drawing, but I still have that thing, dude. I still have it. So a Cub Scout badge, if you will, right? From one of the masters.
That's wholesome.
My name is Mark Viniello. I am a professional special effects makeup artist. I've been doing this for about 30 years. And I've done everything from building creatures on the floor of the shop to supervising and budgeting and working with the producers.
Mark, how was your role related to the creation of the Spinosaurus?
Well, my department was the foam rubber department. So what we were responsible for was generating skins of the dinosaurs out of all of the molds. That then the skins got seamed and patched and painted.
Hello, Cretaceous the Hunted, welcome.
The mechanisms or the
He
costumes.
says, "Hello, Jack. No, don't speak Spanish."
And it was a massive undertaking. The Spinosaur was one of the biggest molds I've ever had to run. They had to break down into sections.
The coffee spilled out everywhere.
Stan's giant ovens. We had to do it in little pieces, big pieces.
I mean, that had to have been an extremely large amount of work.
It's huge. And a tremendous amount of work went into it. And they were sculpting it right outside my department room. So if you ever see any videos of it being sculpted or painted, it's like right next to the foam room and right next to the ovens. And, it's always a little nerve-wracking when you're doing that much rubber to get out of the molds. And it was kind of funny because, we built one Spinosaur. We had to make a couple of fins. I think we did 2 heads, but there was one full size, arms and, back legs and stuff. And, it took weeks for the sculpture to get finished. And it took more weeks, for the molds to get done. The mold makers spent, I don't know how many weeks making these molds, and I would use them in a day. I'd literally get the mold, and in one day, we'd run the skin, we'd open it, great, and then the mold, and we were done. And it's funny because one of the mold guys like, man, we killed ourselves for weeks in this mold. The least you can do is use it a little longer than a day. And I'm like, sorry. So it was, and what was cool was comparing that technology with the original T-Rex stuff, at least the T-Rex from the Lost World. And then talking to the mechanics about it is that the motors were so much faster and more powerful than what was done, 7 years prior. So it was really a much faster, slicker puppet than even the original T-Rex, which was a marvel.
That's so sad because it's like
artistry.
Jurassic Park 3. Yeah, the animatronic was
Doug,
really
as the
high
art
tech,
director,
but
can you give us some insight into the scale of this?
The way it's shot, there's so many shots where it just looks like a robot on a theme park, popping out on the Jurassic Park ride or something. It wasn't the river attack sequence. Great, I think the animatronic is used perfectly in that sequence, but the whole plane attack sequence, so the bit where they've hidden it behind the branches and it's ducking its head inside, that's okay. But it's when it's pulling the nose cone off and eating Nash and moving side to side, it's it just looks a bit ugh. And there's a bit when it walks alongside the cage during the river attack sequence, I will say, and it does look like it's on a track when it's bobbing up and down like this. You can kind of tell. You get that in the Lost World though with the 2 T-Rexes when they walk down the trailer. You can tell that they're just on a track bobbing up and down. But yeah, all that work and it's not shot really as well as it could be.
The animatronics of it were like a locomotive. It was on train tracks essentially through stage 12 at Universal, and so the set elements really had to play around this very specific choreography of the animatronics, and it was a massive dinosaur, just down to the feet. The rest of the feet were then replaced in VFX, but everything from knee up essentially was working animatronics, along with the T-Rex in the battle. So that was a challenge to assure that the stage, which has its own limitations, was used to its greatest potential, but then also we really were building around this very dynamic piece of machinery.
I'm John Rosengrant. I'm one of the owners of Legacy Effects. And on JP3, I was the animatronic supervisor for Stan Winston's studio at the time. And what came down, for me, what it was looking after all the dinosaurs from every aspect, from in getting them on set and having them perform.
I do recall watching a video where somebody was describing how large the Spinosaurus was and how it couldn't fit through the door. Is that accurate?
It was huge. It was bigger than the T-Rex, and the T-Rex, we had to raise the door to get that out. And part of its travel, I know the famous story on the first Jurassic was we had it on the road at 3 a.m. and it was all tarped up and things, and Champion Crane had this big, huge crane and a big, giant lowboy that it went on top of. But we had a certain path it had to travel on, so on the streets, so it would fit under bridges that wouldn't catch power lines. So this is all going on in, the middle of the night prepping. So the same thing happened with Spinosaur. They had to build.
Oh, he was talking about the original T-Rex. Wow.
Built, cut into the ground, a big like railroad track for it to move on, and we also moved the T-Rex over there. But the set was built up around the Spinosaur because it could be picked and spun around on that track to be going in a different direction. But the set was built around him. I mean, it was such a big deal.
My name is David Bonzingo, and on Jurassic Park 3, I worked as a key artist at Stan Winston's studio, making dinosaurs. Hydraulic puppets, how they work is basically there's hydraulic pistons that actuate the movement, and then hydraulic fluid is pumped through to the pistons at high pressure, and then there's a control system that by modulating the pressure of the hydraulic fluid, it makes the pistons move in a certain direction. But hydraulic oil destroys foam rubber, and all the dinosaurs on every Jurassic Park movie, maybe very limited exceptions, their skins are made out of foam rubber. But the problem there is that if the hydraulic system springs a leak, that hydraulic oil literally destroys the foam. Not quite like acid, but basically once it hits the foam and soaks into it, it causes it to swell up, and it becomes this like jelly-like goo, and it's just literally like
they just melt.
And then when that happens, and it happens, you have to. The only option is to like find.
So the Spinosaurus's fate, where the Spinosaurus, where the Spinosaurus ended up, it was like the Wicked Witch at the end of Wizard of Oz. It was like, I'm melting now. What a world! What a world! And all the T-Rexes.
And then try and patch in good foam.
Would that happen often?
That happened on it was either the T-Rex or the Spinosaur.
What can you tell us about working with Steven Spielberg? In the past, you've worked on a couple Jurassic films with him. Maybe how was JP3 different because he was less involved?
No, I'll say this because this is not denigrating Steven Spielberg in any way. Steven Spielberg, there is this filmmaking machine that comes to set with him. His crew is this, and it's serious. There's a palpable pressure on Steven Spielberg's sets that is not there on other film sets, and so it felt a lot more free. It just felt more easygoing. A good example. Let me give you an example. On Jurassic Park 2, there was one day we were filming on the stages with the raptors, and we had set up for a shot where there's a scene where like Jeff Goldblum's daughter does this kind of gymnastics routine and kicks a raptor out a window, and we'd set up a kind of a floppy.
You could hear the host laugh.
Window. It was basically on a bunch of wires, and it was going to get yanked out. And so almost all the crew was across the stage filming, and Stan took most of the crew over with him, but they just had me hang back with the floppy puppet. It's like, just wait here, make sure no one touches it, no one screws with it. Just make, because we've done a lot of work to set it up, didn't want anything to happen. So I was basically sitting on one side of the soundstage by myself. No one's there, the lights are off. And I'm just sitting there, and, they're filming on their side of the stage, and then all of a sudden, Steven Spielberg kind of walks across the stage. He's standing maybe 10 feet from me, and he's looking into the set where they're going to film the Raptor, and he's looking at the Raptor, and he just kind of poses a question out to no one in particular. He just kind of says it out to the world. He goes, "Can this Raptor move its mouth, move its head, or something like that?" He asked if part of the Raptor could move. And I look around, there's no one there except me. So I get up from my seat, I start walking the 10 feet to him, and as I get like halfway, literally out of nowhere, you hear this thump, 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 thump of feet come running, and this guy, it's one of his assistants, slides in between Steven Spielberg and I, like, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Oh, well, he just asked a question. I was going to answer." Like, "Well, whatever you have to tell him, you can tell me."
What?
It's like, "Oh, okay. Well, you can tell him that the Raptor's head can move." "All right, thank you very much." And then I just went back and sat down, and so that's just an example.
That's Hollywood for you.
Robert, when editing the
Can't
Spinoverse
just have a
T-Rex
normal
fight,
conversation
how
with
did you
someone.
approach it? And were there many shots cut? Was it initially much longer?
We did cut some shots. I don't know if I told
Isn't
you.
that kind of
this,
weird that,
but
like, on his own movie set,
the
like,
Spino and
they have to have
T-Rex
people that
fight.
they don't trust the public.
the main shot of that, which was all CG. It was one of the last shots we got. We were actually mixing at the ranch.
I guess I wouldn't
Lucasfilm
trust the
Ranch,
public either. There's
Skywalker.
filth.
We got the shot from Island, which at that time was down in San Rafael, and we went into my cutting room at the ranch, and we looked at the shot, and I cut it in. Joe and I looked at each other and said, forget those 5 shots before, which was like the classic thing of two people about to fight, looking at each other, looking at each other, looking at each other. Close, medium shots, head shots, blah, blah, blah. There's probably 5 or 6 shots. Cut them out. And, caused the sound department a little trouble. And that shot at the time was the single longest CG shot that ILM had made.
Shelley, as DP, I can only imagine.
Wait, what was that? I want to rewind that. What did he just? What was he
shooting
talking about?
That
HUD was it initially much?
fight.
Right.
HUD was it initially much?
Just an example.
Robert, when editing the Spinoverse T-Rex fight, how did you approach it? And were there many shots cut? Was it initially much longer?
We did
He
cut
is
some
talking about
shots.
that. That's cool.
I don't know if I told you this story. When the Spino and the
This guy sounds a little bit like Nedry. Mikey says, JP3 felt rushed to me. The film wasn't long and the story moved too quickly. I think it's only 90 minutes or so. It's 93 minutes long.
T-Rex fight, the main shot of that, which was all CG, it was one of the last shots we got, and we were actually mixing at the ranch, at Lucasfilm Ranch, Skywalker. We got the shot from ILM, which at that time was down in San Rafael, and we went into my cutting room at the ranch, and we looked at the shot, and I cut it in. Joe and I looked at each other and said, forget those 5 shots before, which was like the classic thing of two people about to fight, looking at each other, looking at each other, looking at each other. Close, medium shots, head shots, blah, blah, blah. There's probably 5 or 6 shots. Cut them out. And, caused the sound department a little trouble. And that shot at the time was the single longest CG shot that ILM had made.
I want to see that shot. Where's
Shelley,
that
as
shot?
DP, I can only imagine the amount of prep that went into planning this fight. You're shooting with animatronics and adding in CGI shots. Did your initial plan change as it went along?
We were going to shoot it like a standard fight, almost like a bar fight. almost like a Western fight in a street where they come up and they kind of like square up to each other and roar at each other and try to threaten each other away, and that doesn't work, and they're forced to kind of to go at it. And Joe wanted to do as much as he could with these animatronics. The animatronics were really good. And this was the first film where Stan's dinosaurs and the ILM dinosaurs were able to share the same frame together. On the previous films, it had to be one or the other because you could tell the difference. If they were in a two-shot, you could tell the difference. Well, in our film, we could do a two-shot because Stan's dinosaurs had gotten so good, and ILM's dinosaurs...
Did they not do a shot in the first two movies of an animatronic and a CGI in one shot? I'm trying to think now. I swear there's one shot in the first film when the T-Rex like butts the car and its foot comes in and it's like animatronic in the background but CGI in the foreground. Or I could just be wrong. I swear. Not even with like the compies? No? Interesting.
Dinosaurs had gotten so good. But Joe really liked being able to use Stan's dinosaurs where he could. Stan's dinosaurs could do everything except walk, and that's the one thing they couldn't do. But once they landed on a spot, they could move, the way their necks moved, everything was, it was incredible. The engineering on these things, they were absolutely incredible. In fact, even on some of the older film, the first film, they had to do some undercranking with the camera, which meant they had to shoot slightly fast motion in order to get the dinosaurs to kind of move quickly, because in the Crichton book, he talks about how they moved almost like bird-like, very deceivingly fast, faster than you'd ever think. And so to get that, they actually had the hydraulics wouldn't allow such a big creature to move so quickly. Well, in the later films, the hydraulics got better and better, and I didn't have to do any undercranking. I could shoot normal, and they just moved fast. They were that good. And so we had done some shots back and forth. Of course, the animals couldn't touch. And so everything we shot was sort of like on a long lens to kind of compress them and make them look like, and they had to sort of sell their head butts and all that, almost like a stuntman would have to sell that. And that took some doing, and it worked kind of only so well. Okay, so now they're in editing, and Robert's cutting this together, and I think they're not really feeling 100% like they've got this fight. And so let me just explain one thing before I go on to the story. The way that we would shoot plates.
Okay, let's pause real quick for a moment. If you don't know what the term plate means, and I won't claim to be an expert on this, so I Googled it to be clear. Google says a plate is also known as a blank take with no actor in the shot, also taken to give compositors a reference of what parts of the shot are different in each take. That's a plate.
The way that we would shoot plates.
It's also something you eat off of.
Joe used to work at ILM. He knows all about what it is to shoot plates, and so, when you shoot a clean plate for something that a dinosaur is going to be in, you'll shoot a background, and then you'll shoot another background, and you'll shoot all these different shots. So we're on stage, and instead of doing all these various plate shots as different shots, Joe would just do them all in one shot. So we'd go, okay, pan over left, and now hold on that for a minute. Okay, now pan right. Okay, now tilt up slowly. Okay, good. Now we've got two plates, and now pan over right again. Okay, go to that tree. Okay, focus there. Okay, now tilt down. Okay, now pan left over here. So he would do like 5 or 6 plates in kind of one take just to get them done quickly. Okay, so now the reason I'm telling you that is because Robert now has a long take with all of these plates in it, right? Well, that's what they ended up using for the background of that shot. It was the shot that they ended up doing with the CG Spinosaurus and T-Rex is all an ILM shot, but of course we didn't shoot a plate for it. But we did have this long take where we shot several plates, and that's what they used. They obviously did a lot of work on it, and they had to respeed some of it and probably do a lot of set extensions on a lot of it and all that, but that plate was our whole set, because he did like 8 or 9, I remember shooting it, he did like 8 or 9 different shots in this one plate, so we had all this movement, and then they were able to choreograph all of the fight within that movement. It was incredible the way they did it. And I remember that shot, I think, was the last shot we got. We were well into answer print, into grading, and that shot was just a slug. We didn't get that shot until the very, very end, and it came in, and it's probably one of the best shots in the whole film. This thing unfolded on screen. My mouth was agape. I couldn't believe what they had done. And it was by far the best way to do it. To basically play that shot out and play that fight out of one shot was, it's nothing that was planned. It's something that they found with assets that we just happened to shoot for a different reason, and then they made it work. It's quite masterfully done, and quite a miraculous solution to kind of a problem they had. Something we did that wasn't really working as good as it should have, that then became something amazing.
Mark, were you there to witness the actual fight?
I wish I was, because it was, you could have sold tickets and had bleachers there seeing these puppets fired up. I was there when we installed this.
So funny how,
There's footage on the Stan Winston School of Character Arts website that shows him, moving the thing out.
Controversial this fight is. They even talk about it like it's an actual fight. Oh, this fight was so controversial. I heard the T-Rex boys paid off the Spino boys so they could let him lose. But the T-Rex,
I understand again.
The Spino boys had other ideas.
It is kind of
they rigged the fight so the T-Rex would lose.
They don't really run around.
His reputation in the can.
They're kind of on a track and they move beautifully.
Can never come back from this.
Was
Not
really,
for another 14 years.
What worked best, and I wish I was there for the last take when they said, "Okay, just go for it," just like giant Rock'em Sock'em robots. These dinosaurs were on telemetry suits, so if a guy moved his arms, the puppet would move his arms. They had all different types of, there were so many puppeteers, and the Spinosaur puppet grabbed the T-Rex and literally ripped the head off with hydraulic fluid going everywhere, and it was kind of a mess. That's what I had heard. I did not see it, though.
The last day, when they finished filming all their shots, and Joe Johnson had the two dinosaurs fight to the death, the Spinosaur ripped the T-Rex's head off. Literally, the biggest robot fighting ever, and the most expensive.
I've heard from a few people about the actual fight where the animatronics really went head to head and fought. Did you get to see it? Were you on set? And if so, what was the reaction of the crew watching?
The fight with the T-Rex was one of the last things we did. We actually had those two machines go at it. It was kind of sad, and it really affected some of the guys that had been on it.
They just destroyed the things they'd been working on.
The first Jurassic, because the T-Rex was basically was refurbished on the one of the Rexes that was used in Lost World, because we did it differently from the first film to the second film, and then we carried on with that philosophy on the third film, which was to build half of it. Basically, you'd get from behind his hind leg and then cut at the knees and then forward, because what we found from Jurassic Park, it was hard to keep all of the dinosaur in frame.
I spoke to Brad Jost, the host of the Jurassic Park podcast, as well as Tom Fishenden. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram at Tom_Jurassic, and Caleb Burnett, who is on Instagram and Twitter at CalebComposed. I spoke to them about their thoughts on the fight and whether or not they were upset by the killing of such an iconic dino. Brad, what did it mean to see the T-Rex die so early on in JP3?
Yes, I'm a fan of the dinosaur, the T-Rex, but it didn't register to me at all. I watched the movie and I saw that fight scene, and it still is a pretty fun fight scene, and there's a lot of really cool stuff in that moment. And then the Spino kills the T-Rex, and that did not faze me whatsoever. That was not a thing until later on in life, when I started being much more active in the fan community and then podcasting and stuff, that I actually realized that people disliked that moment, to the point of wanting changes or wanting to see it in a future film kind of reversed with a different outcome. And that has never been me. I've actually appreciated the fact that the Spinosaurus killed the T-Rex, because it sets up the Spinosaurus as something bigger and badder, and it paid off. That was the intent. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted you.
I want to say that my thoughts on it are, on this whole rematch thing, I don't care as long as the context is okay. As long as the context to build up to a rematch, if they did it, was believable to me, then I'm fine with them doing another rematch. Doesn't bother me. It's all about that context.
To believe that this thing was way scarier. You know, they hear that roar off in the jungle when they land the plane, and they're standing there next to it, and Grant's like, no, that's, you know, sounds bigger or whatever, and it is. It's bigger, it's scarier, and I still love the Spinosaurus so much. I feel like I'm one of very few people in the fan community that like really embraces this thing and loves it to death, and I'm constantly making memes
I like the
out of it because
Spinosaurus.
it's just so funny to me. Like,
Nothing really
I love
against
this thing
it.
so much, and I think the
there's more
Spinosaurus
fans of
could
it
take
than
any
haters.
dinosaur out there, Indominus included. So I'll make that proclamation.
I'm probably going to be saying a lot of controversial things on this episode, because there's always like the things that people point out with this film that they don't like, and I'm like, yeah, I like it. I never had a problem with it, really. I think when you're setting something up like a dinosaur to be an adversary for the film, following on from two films that have been so T-Rex focused, it makes sense for it to happen. And I think obviously, in terms of paleontological accuracy, there's a lot of debate about that, especially with more recent discoveries about Spino. But I think if you sort of think about it in its modern context, which I always like to do, which is taking into account things like the DPG website, for example, which speculate that it might have been hybridized.
No.
Or I think it's the Masrani backdoor that says that.
It's not a hybrid.
Then it kind of makes a lot more sense, and I think
it's not a hybrid,
it just
Tom.
serves to up the stakes even
Tom,
more in
it's
this
not a
film.
hybrid.
So if you think about
That's not a hybrid.
the first Jurassic Park, for example, a lot of that film, the main characters spend it running away from the T-Rex, and they're absolutely terrified of this thing. It's the most deadly threat possible. So if you then in a sequel have something which kills that within the first few minutes, it instantly elevates the stakes. So I think it makes sense, and I never really had a problem with it. I like how it goes to show just how aggressive and how dangerous the Spino is.
He's spreading fake
as
news.
Far as the Spino versus T-Rex fight goes, yeah, I think it would have been a cool climax for the film. And it's definitely just like so jarring where it is, and as far as film narratives go, I guess it like establishes the Spino as the big bad, and you are definitely scared. The audience is definitely scared of the Spinosaurus after that, because you're like, oh man, like just killed the T-Rex with very little effort.
It's just a shame it doesn't do anything else after that, really.
Is
To
kind of
like
the staple here, and
doesn't
it's like,
kill
well,
any of the
this is-
characters or
that-
anything.
I mean, maybe that's when, as an audience member, we knew the film was going to be different. It was like, oh, okay, like T-Rex is not going to be very much involved here, and this is a Jurassic Park movie. So,
my name is Anthony Schaefer. I was the assistant technical director. I started out as assistant technical director, and I became the technical director on Jurassic Park 3 at Industrial Light and Magic.
As you look back on your JP3 experience, how do you describe it?
You know, I was the low kid on the totem pole. Almost fresh out of college and tackling my first dinosaur. That said, he was incredibly gracious with his time. He gave very clear direction, and I thoroughly enjoyed working for him. JP3 was probably one of my favorite Jurassic Parks. I really enjoyed it. I loved working on the show. It was a dream to be able to, light and work on those dinosaurs. And likewise, having him there, giving direct comments and being able to get that feedback really made it not only a pleasurable experience, but it was a lot faster and more effective and cheaper to go straight to the horse and get the words rather than go through multiple interpreters.
So your work was primarily on the Spinosaurus.
The context of Jurassic Park 3 is in one of the first scenes with the Spinosaurus. When you meet the Spino, or the characters meet the Spino, is in the jungle, and their airplane
crashes.
It may be wise for me
caught up
to
in
make a
tree and
misconception
falls
video
down,
about this
and then they're faced with
Spinosaurus
this,
being a hybrid.
enormous dinosaur.
But I might
And
wait.
when they first
There might
bid
be a
out the
more
shots, they
interesting
gave all
time in
these
the future to record
seemingly easy shots to junior artists, much like myself. The first shot I ever had was the Spinosaurus crushing the fuselage, and it was 2 to 3 shots. They looked exactly the same, and there was a puppet next to it, like a half-size dinosaur with just the leg built, and then I lit and rendered the foot crushing the real fuselage, and then the
that.
dinosaur
Do that middle
would,
toe claw.
or the shot was inside of the fuselage looking
That
out.
little toe claw, whatever it
The
is.
foot stepped, and it stomped.
The
and then
talon.
it continued to walk on. So the first pass of that shot was like, well, this looks great. I mean, the foot is well lit. However, there's no ground interaction. And typically the way shots at Industrial Light and Magic are set up, they either have a set of effects that you would apply, say like debris or a tree limb, or they would have to develop them as they discovered these challenges. And in this case, we needed a giant footprint and then leaf debris. Well, as it turns out, that technique had not been developed for the show yet, and it being like my first week as a lighting artist, I went to the challenge with eyes wide open and very naively thought that it would be an easy process. But what ended up happening is I found a technique they used on Jack Frost just a year before.
The Michael
where
Keaton movie.
Jack Frost was rolling down. I think he was moving through the snow, and they were pushing the snow away so that it looked like he was plowing it. So I kind of took that technique, which is basically the foot. If you think of the foot as just barely touching water, and then you take the slice of the foot that's in the water, and then you use that to generate kind of like ripples. And then use those ripples to reproject the original plate so that it felt like there was a depression. That was
This podcast is really well
using.
done.
So largely my role on JP3 turned into kind of a groundsman of sorts. So I would design
I'm going to end the stream
plants
after I finish this
also
guy,
worked well with
because
footprints, hanging vines, and so forth.
my
that
wife
the
will be
dinosaurs
here
would specifically
soon,
step on
and
to interact.
she's been out all day,
Being
so I
so
want to
young and
catch up
working on a
and
big budget film, what would
hit
you
the
say
hay,
your
ready for
biggest
tomorrow.
challenge was at the time?
The other challenge that was really unique about Jurassic Park 3 is that it was the first show, to my knowledge, that had ambient occlusion. And for the non-computer graphic people out there, ambient occlusion is kind of the shading of a white dome, of when you have a uniform lighting and you just see the creases and the close proximity shadows. So like if you were to hold your hands close together, the ambient light around your hands occlude everything
Hello, Mike
inside of
Shatter.
your cupped.
He says, "Damn, been a while since I've watched one of your streams." Yeah, where you been, mate?
The footprints I
doing?
was assigned to
Oh, you're right.
develop the system of which to put a dinosaur onto a plate and it would look like it's there by using this technique. And I was really struggling
Yeah, your
because
Crytops.
the light bouncing
Yeah, it
off
does look
of
like
the
that, doesn't
ground
it?
of an object didn't have a shadow because the shadow didn't exist. And so all the feet were glowing and the under parts of the dinosaur were glowing. And after 2 weeks, I just couldn't get it working. So I called over my supervisor, Christoph Harry, and who's a brilliant mathematician and is now building the next coolest thing at Facebook. And he designed much of the lighting.
I've been working on a couple of projects, Johnny. Just forgot about this channel. My bad.
Mentor, and
Well, you're here
I'm
now,
like,
aren't you?
Christoph, I just like this math is just insane. Like I need to have this vector coming from the sun, which then occludes the dinosaur before it hits this ground, and then it
creates the shadow, which then creates
Mike,
a vector
let me catch you up on where we're at. Look, this is what we're working on.
Oh yeah. So
we're working on
popped
this.
Up in a little window
It's
on my
a
machine.
combination of 2D animation and 3D background.
Equations, multiple parentheses, and he's like, oh, okay, I think that'll do it.
We're up to.
Hit save, and he hits render, and then bink, the entire thing was done in a matter of like less than 2 minutes. That after 2 weeks of just like banging my head against the wall, I just could not figure out. And that's when I talk about teams. It's the kind of person that would be accrued on a show when you need stuff like that.
And I know it's been 20 years, but even if it's not Jurassic Park related, do you have any
it is insane.
Fun or interesting stories like to share?
Never done anything like this before, so I'm sort of making it up as I go along.
Yeah, I mean,
hoping it works.
You know, when
so
ILM
far, so
moved
good.
out of its ILM Kerner facility in San Rafael down to the Presidio, I was on Pirates of the Caribbean 2. We were like the last show out, and it was at the point where everyone was just like, just get the hell out of Dodge, right? They want to all go to the new facility, brand new everything. The Kerner facility was acquired after Star Wars, like after
Star
the
Wars?
original Star Wars. So
who's mentioned
they
Star
have a
Wars?
long history of being in that building, and I was on night shift, and you know, usually when we were fixing computers or whatever, you discover.
Yeah, Zul, what time is it there for you?
Discover like
you're saying you're drinking some meat. Well, you're drinking
like literally
something and having
here's
cookies.
this sci-tech Oscar sitting up on a dusty shelf behind like an Alias Wavefront book. That's weird. And just like the rando stuff that you would come across because the facility was around for 20 some odd years. And they would just kind of build
5 a.m.
walls and move
Dude.
people around, and nothing ever.
Have you
left
just
the
got
facility.
up, or have you not?
So
been
when
to
they
sleep?
moved, it was kind of like junk pandemonium. Like they were just trying to get rid of stuff because they were going into a Class A building, and it was highly curated, and all the cruft and junk of ILM, including all the stage stuff, was literally abandoned. So on the last day, we were the last group out, and there was a cleaning crew that it wasn't a cleaning crew, it was like a consulting crew, and they had just like literally were just throwing stuff in the dumpsters, right? and then they locked it up, and they pushed it out of the gate and locked the gates, and I saw some stuff go in there, and I wasn't sure what it was. So after work, I went back into the dumpster, and I got these stop motion. I think it's a stop motion puppet from Jurassic Park 1. Maybe it's 2. I don't know which. It's a Parasaurolophus, and it's fully articulated.
Really?
Yeah, and it's.
Do you still have it?
Yeah, I still have it. It's like sitting right behind me. It's kind of like in my Zoom calls. It's hanging upside down from my office, and people are always comment on why is there a dinosaur hanging upside down from your ceiling. And then I also found that like the
so was the
tip of
Parasaurolophus
the
that was
the Spinosaurus. So the
so
model
was the
shop.
Parasaurolophus going to
really
in the
golden
net?
time at ILM,
Was
where
that
they
going to
would
be
build
a
out
stop motion?
Full maquettes
Or armature?
of the maquettes are basically high quality sculptures painted down to the smallest detail of the characters, their creatures, and then they would give those to the texturing artists that would literally photograph the puppets and then texture map the puppets onto the CG, mixed with real world textures.
I just woke up.
And you can see it today at the ILM facility at LDAC in the Presidio. There's a huge Spinosaurus. It's probably 5 feet long, 3 or 4 feet tall, and it was in the production office. And every day we'd walk by it, and sometimes, like when I was lighting the foot, like I used it as reference and put some lights up on it and see how the light bounces off and stuff. And I found the finger to it, and so I had this finger in my like trophy case next to like a dinosaur, Parasaurolophus, and a Spinosaurus finger, and guests. And my house come over like, what's that finger for? And I'm like, oh, that's Spinosaurus's finger. I still have his finger somewhere in my trophy case.
Very cool.
Yeah, and it was all like swept up into the dumpster, just kind of funny.
All right, I'm going to end the podcast there. There's about half an hour left of that podcast. Just going to save this guy. And then I will end the stream. It was only a short one, but hey, we were productive either way. So we got three of these little render's done. So just save this. And we're going to try and get him to there. Into that box there. So save this as the 3D layer. Mikey says, isn't Faye's sister trapped in the crane room? The Megalosaurus is breaking in. I'll have to watch episode 3 again. No, she's trapped in the garage. Looking sweet, Jack says, ooh, thanks, Big Shot. The tower fell on, no problem. Yeah, Ruby is Faye's sister, yeah. God, look, my hair went proper 90s for a second because it was like drying. Right, anyway. Oop. Yeah, thanks for coming along, guys. I hope you've enjoyed tonight's stream. How long were we going for? An hour and 20 minutes. Not bad. Not bad. Anyway, guys, I will see you later. Bye-bye.